The courtroom was filled with tension, every eye fixed on the billionaire sitting at the center, a woman known for her sharp mind, wealth, and influence. She had faced many challenges in her life, but nothing quite like this day. Today, the stakes were higher than ever, and the atmosphere in the courtroom felt heavy, as if everyone could sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and old paper, a smell that seemed to make the room feel even more serious and important. As she sat there, the billionaire adjusted her designer suit and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Her hands trembled slightly, and her eyes darted around the room, noticing the lawyers, the witnesses, and the judge. She could feel the weight of the entire trial pressing down on her shoulders. It was more than just a legal battle, it was a test of her courage, her patience, and her ability to stay composed under pressure. Every decision, every word spoken today could change her life forever. Among the people in the room, most were focused on the obvious figures, the lawyers arguing their points, the judge presiding over the proceedings, and the reporters quietly taking notes in the back. But in a quiet corner of the courtroom, someone else was watching too, someone no one expected to play a part in the drama that was about to unfold. A humble janitor, a man who usually moved through the shadows, cleaning floors, arranging chairs, and making sure everything ran smoothly, was standing there, observing everything with keen eyes. His presence was almost invisible to most people, yet he noticed details that others missed: the nervous glance of the opposing lawyer, the hesitation in a witness's voice, and the subtle cues that something was about to go terribly wrong. The janitor had seen many things during his years working in the courthouse, but he had never seen a situation like this, never witnessed such a powerful person suddenly appear so vulnerable. He could feel the fear and uncertainty radiating from the billionaire, and something inside him stirred, a quiet but strong sense of responsibility. He realized that even though he had no formal training, no legal experience, he could not simply stand by and watch. He felt a determination rising within him. A thought that repeated itself in his mind: I will defend her. Meanwhile, the billionaire tried to focus on the case at hand, reviewing the notes and documents in front of her. She knew her lawyer had always been reliable, someone she trusted to protect her interests, but on this day, there was an air of unease, a sense that things might not go as planned. Every time she glanced at her lawyer, she noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes, something she had never seen before. It made her stomach twist with anxiety. She had prepared for every possible challenge, yet somehow, she felt completely unprepared for what was coming. The courtroom itself seemed to mirror the tension inside her. The wooden benches were polished to a shine, reflecting the bright lights from above. The walls were lined with books, law texts stacked neatly in rows, symbolizing the power of knowledge and rules. But even all that knowledge could not predict the human emotions, the courage, or the unexpected bravery that were about to emerge. Every sound in the room, the scratching of pens, the shuffling of papers, the quiet murmurs from the gallery, added to the suspense, making it feel as if the world itself was holding its breath. As minutes ticked by, the billionaire's confidence wavered slightly. She tried to focus on her breathing, to remind herself that she had overcome challenges before, but there was something different this time, something that made her feel exposed and uncertain. She looked around, wondering if anyone in the room truly understood the danger she faced. She needed support, someone who would not abandon her, someone willing to stand by her side no matter what. And then, quietly observing from the background, the janitor made a decision, a choice that would change everything. He did not rush or act without thought, but his eyes met hers briefly, almost as if he were silently telling her, "You are not alone, I will be here, I will help you." At that moment, something shifted, a small spark of hope ignited in the billionaire's heart. She could not have known yet that this ordinary man, who spent most of his days cleaning and maintaining the courthouse, would become her unexpected hero. It was a day like no other, a day when the lines between social status, power, and heroism would blur. The billionaire, confident yet vulnerable, the janitor, humble yet courageous, and the courtroom, silent yet full of tension, together created a scene that would be remembered long after the gavel struck. Little did anyone know, the events that would unfold in the next few hours would redefine bravery, loyalty, and justice in ways that no one could have predicted. The tension in the courtroom grew thicker with every passing minute, like a heavy fog settling over everyone present. The billionaire, still trying to calm herself, sensed that something was about to go terribly wrong. Her lawyer, whom she had trusted completely, was acting unusually quiet, fidgeting with papers, avoiding eye contact, and glancing nervously toward the entrance of the courtroom. The subtle signs were enough to make her heart race faster, yet she tried to convince herself that it was just her imagination, that everything would proceed as planned. But the truth was undeniable. When the moment came, the lawyer did the unthinkable. He stood up abruptly, muttered an excuse under his breath, and walked out of the courtroom, leaving the billionaire utterly alone. Shock and disbelief froze her in place for a few seconds. She blinked repeatedly, as if trying to make the reality disappear, but the murmurs from the audience, the astonished gasps, and the whispers from the court staff confirmed the unthinkable. She had been abandoned, betrayed at the very moment she needed help the most. The courtroom, once a place of order and rules, now felt chaotic. Its walls, lined with law books and polished wood, seemed to close in on her. The powerful presence of the judge, who had always maintained authority, could not erase the humiliation and fear she felt. The billionaire, who had faced countless challenges in life, realized that money, influence, and power meant nothing in the face of human betrayal. Her mind raced, trying to figure out what to do next, yet the path forward seemed impossible. As the billionaire struggled, the janitor, still quietly observing from the shadows, noticed the change in the room. He saw the fear in her eyes, the hesitation in her movements, and the confusion spreading across the faces of those present. His heart sank at the thought of leaving her like this. He knew that no one else in the courtroom seemed ready or willing to step up. That was when a quiet but fierce determination ignited inside him. He could not allow this injustice to continue. He reminded himself of a simple truth: courage is not measured by wealth, status, or education, but by action. He began moving slowly toward the side of the courtroom where the billionaire sat. Every step he took seemed deliberate, measured, yet filled with purpose. His presence, though unassuming, began to change the energy in the room. A few curious glances followed him, whispers started circulating, but no one expected what he was about to do. The billionaire noticed him approaching and felt a strange mixture of confusion and hope. There was something in his eyes, an unwavering commitment, a silent promise that he would not let her face this alone. Meanwhile, the opposing counsel, sensing an opportunity, began smirking confidently. Their arrogance filled the room. Believing the billionaire had no defense, they had assumed that her lawyer walking out meant victory was theirs, but they had not counted on the unexpected hero waiting in the wings. The janitor, though lacking formal training, had something far more valuable: courage, loyalty, and a determination to do what was right. The atmosphere shifted subtly, almost imperceptibly at first, but enough for those paying attention to notice. The billionaire straightened her posture, feeling the unspoken support from the janitor. She realized that even without her lawyer, she was not entirely powerless. That quiet figure in the corner represented hope, someone willing to defy expectations and take a stand. The seeds of a remarkable partnership had been planted, and the courtroom, once a place of anxiety and fear, was about to witness an extraordinary turn of events. Little did anyone know that this janitor, a man many considered invisible, would soon challenge the norms of power, courage, and justice, that he would become the lifeline the billionaire desperately needed, and that his actions would not only affect the outcome of the case but leave a lasting impression on everyone present. The stage was set, the players were in motion, and the real drama was about to unfold. One that would inspire and astonish, revealing that heroism often comes from the most unexpected places. The janitor paused for a moment near the edge of the courtroom, watching the billionaire struggle with disbelief. Her eyes, wide with fear and confusion, met his briefly, and in that instant, something clicked, something deep inside him stirred, a mix of empathy, courage, and a sense of responsibility. For years, he had walked these halls unnoticed, sweeping floors, wiping desks, and performing the quiet duties no one seemed to value. Yet, in that moment, he realized that all his years of observing, listening, and understanding the courthouse's rhythm had prepared him for this. He could not, would not, stand idly by while injustice unfolded right before his eyes. He took a slow, steadying breath, feeling his heart pounding. The decision he was about to make was not easy. He had no legal training, no formal education in courtroom procedures, and no authority to intervene, yet the thought of leaving the billionaire alone, abandoned by her own lawyer, was unbearable. Something inside him whispered, "This is your moment, you can make a difference." and he knew he had to act. Carefully, he moved closer, blending determination with caution, aware that any misstep could create chaos or make things worse. He observed the documents scattered before her, the evidence carefully organized yet vulnerable without guidance. He knew he could not replace a lawyer, but he could support, protect, and do everything in his power to keep her safe. That simple realization strengthened his resolve, filling him with a quiet confidence he had never felt before. He remembered the stories he had heard about true heroism, not in movies or books, but in real life, the kind where ordinary people stepped up at the right time, risking everything for someone else. He knew that this was one of those moments. A small voice in his mind repeated the words that had been forming for days, "I will defend her," and he whispered them quietly under his breath, almost as if saying them aloud would give them power. The billionaire, still in shock, noticed the janitor's presence, a strange mix of curiosity and hope flickering across her face. She had expected no help, no support beyond her abandoned lawyer, and yet here was a man, someone she had barely noticed before, stepping forward with courage in his eyes. It was unexpected, almost unbelievable, but there was something genuine about him, something that made her feel, for the first time since the betrayal, that she was not entirely alone. He approached her side quietly, kneeling down just enough to be heard without drawing unnecessary attention. "I know this is sudden," he said softly, his voice calm but firm, "but I will help you. I won't let you face this alone." The billionaire stared at him, struggling to process what was happening. She was amazed, unsure whether to trust a janitor with the weight of her legal battle, yet, in that moment, something within her recognized the sincerity and bravery in his eyes. It was not about status, wealth, or education. It was about heart, determination, and the will to do what was right. Around them, the courtroom buzzed with quiet whispers, people noticing the unusual pairing but unsure of what was unfolding. The opposing lawyers exchanged amused glances, expecting a foolish attempt that would crumble under the rules of law, but the janitor remained undeterred, grounded in a sense of purpose that no amount of skepticism could shake. He knew he was stepping into unfamiliar territory, but he also knew that courage often begins where knowledge ends. As he helped the billionaire gather her scattered notes and documents, he spoke softly, giving her instructions, asking questions, and organizing the information she had prepared. Every action, though simple, became significant. Every gesture conveyed reassurance, showing her that she was no longer abandoned. That silent promise of protection and support began to restore her confidence, piece by piece. By the time the judge called the next session to order, the janitor had made a quiet but critical decision. He would stand by her side, not as a lawyer, but as a shield, a helper, a voice of courage in the face of fear. This decision, humble yet powerful, set the stage for the extraordinary events that were about to unfold. It was the moment where ordinary met extraordinary, where heroism was born from the most unexpected place, and where the true story of loyalty, bravery, and justice began. The courtroom was a place of rules, order, and expectation, but on that day, the ordinary rhythm of proceedings had been disrupted. The billionaire sat upright, her hands slightly trembling, yet a new spark of hope had appeared in her eyes. It came from the quiet figure at her side, the janitor, who, despite his lack of formal training, was about to change the course of events. He began by organizing the scattered papers, evidence, and documents in front of her, carefully separating what was essential from what could wait. His hands moved with practiced precision, honed from years of handling details behind the scenes in the courthouse. Every gesture was deliberate, every motion purposeful, yet calm. The billionaire watched him closely, feeling a strange sense of reassurance. It was as if a shield had been placed around her, protecting her from the chaos that had consumed the room just moments before. The opposing counsel noticed the janitor moving with quiet confidence and exchanged a glance of disbelief. They expected a confused, timid man, but what they saw instead was a person moving with determination, his eyes fixed on the task at hand. It unsettled them, though they tried to hide it. Their smirks faltered, replaced by subtle uncertainty. The courtroom, once certain of the billionaire's vulnerability, now felt a shift, a tension that suggested the story was far from over. The janitor began asking questions quietly but effectively, clarifying details with the billionaire, confirming facts, and reviewing evidence. Each question was simple, but it forced the billionaire to think clearly, to organize her thoughts, and to recall the key points of her case. With every word he spoke, he strengthened her confidence, not by legal expertise, but by providing focus, calm, and moral support. It was an unusual method, yet profoundly effective, showing that sometimes courage and clarity matter more than knowledge alone. Witnesses began entering the courtroom, ready to testify, and the janitor quietly guided the billionaire on what to expect, what to say, and how to remain composed. He observed the behavior of the opposing side carefully, noting hesitation, nervous gestures, and inconsistencies in their arguments. Little details that a trained lawyer might overlook became his tools, and he used them skillfully to prepare her. It was not about winning with technicalities but about staying strong, aware, and ready. The judge, initially skeptical of the janitor's involvement, noticed the calm he brought to the billionaire, the subtle but meaningful changes in her posture and demeanor. The woman who had been terrified and abandoned now seemed ready, collected, and determined. It was an unusual sight, one that challenged the norms of the courtroom, yet it could not be ignored. As the trial progressed, the janitor began to anticipate the moves of the opposing counsel, pointing out possible pitfalls, suggesting questions, and reminding the billionaire to emphasize critical points. Each piece of advice, though simple, was a lifeline, helping her navigate a legal landscape she had never fully understood. The billionaire began to realize that help can come from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, courage alone is enough to turn the tide. The audience in the courtroom, initially skeptical, began to notice the change. A hush fell over the spectators as they observed the billionaire regaining her composure, standing taller, speaking more confidently, guided not by her absent lawyer but by the quiet janitor at her side. It was a subtle transformation, yet powerful enough to shift the energy in the room. The opposing counsel, sensing the unexpected challenge, grew cautious, realizing they had underestimated the situation entirely. With every passing moment, the janitor's influence became clearer, not through words of authority but through his steady presence, sharp observation, and unwavering support. He reminded the billionaire that strength comes not from who stands beside you but from the courage that rises within. That simple but profound lesson began to shape the events of the trial, making what seemed impossible gradually attainable. By the end of the morning session, the janitor had not only helped organize the evidence and guide the billionaire but had also instilled a sense of hope, strategy, and calm that no one in the courtroom could deny. The rising action of the day's events had set the stage for confrontation, suspense, and a dramatic challenge to everything the opposing counsel thought they controlled. The janitor, ordinary in appearance yet extraordinary in action, had become the quiet force that would steer the billionaire toward justice. The courtroom buzzed quietly as the next session began, tension hanging in the air like a thick curtain. The billionaire, seated at the center, had regained a semblance of confidence, her eyes scanning the room, but she knew the real challenge was about to begin. Across from her, the opposing counsel sat with smug assurance, expecting an easy victory. Their previous confidence had been shaken slightly by the unexpected presence of the janitor, but they were still convinced that a man without legal training could do little to change the outcome. The janitor, standing close to the billionaire, felt the weight of the moment. His palms were steady despite the pressure, his eyes sharp, scanning every movement, every expression, every gesture of the lawyers, witnesses, and judge. He had prepared for this in the quiet moments before the session, organizing thoughts, reviewing key points, and thinking through the obstacles that might arise. Though he had no legal credentials, he had something far more valuable: presence, courage, and clarity of mind. As the first witness was called, the opposing counsel smirked confidently, expecting smooth testimony in their favor, but the janitor subtly guided the billionaire, whispering advice quietly, reminding her to focus on the facts, observe the witness, and listen carefully to every word. The billionaire followed his guidance, asking clarifying questions and noting small inconsistencies in the testimony. Each word, each question, chipped away at the facade the opposing counsel had relied upon. When it was her turn to speak, the billionaire felt a surge of newfound strength. The janitor stood by her side, calm and attentive, occasionally pointing to a document, giving a nod of reassurance, and offering quiet reminders. It was a strange sight for the courtroom, a janitor actively participating in the flow of the trial, yet there was no mistaking his impact. His presence alone seemed to bolster her confidence, making her answers clear, firm, and precise. The opposing counsel, noticing her sudden composure, grew frustrated. Their previous arrogance began to crack, and subtle mistakes emerged in their arguments. The janitor observed these errors keenly, noting contradictions and preparing the billionaire to respond. He whispered quietly, reminding her of key points, and helping her emphasize crucial facts. It was not traditional legal strategy, but it worked. Every misstep of the opposing side became an opportunity. Tension built as the cross-examination approached. The opposing counsel tried to intimidate, raising their voice and using complex legal terms, hoping to rattle the billionaire, but the janitor remained unflinching, his quiet confidence anchoring her, reminding her to stay grounded, calm, and focused. He suggested simple, direct questions that revealed the flaws in the opposing counsel's narrative, exposing the weaknesses without arrogance or confrontation, allowing the billionaire's truth to shine. As witnesses continued, the janitor's unexpected interventions began to make an impact. The judge, initially skeptical, leaned forward, observing the unusual pairing, noting the billionaire's growing clarity and command of her testimony. The courtroom audience, once murmuring with curiosity, now watched with astonishment, witnessing an ordinary man stepping into an extraordinary role, one that defied expectations and tradition. The confrontation reached its peak when a crucial piece of evidence was introduced. The opposing counsel attempted to twist it in their favor, expecting the billionaire to falter, yet, guided by the janitor's careful preparation, she responded calmly, pointing out inconsistencies and referencing supporting documents, her voice steady, her arguments precise. She stood taller than before, backed not by lawyers or wealth, but by the quiet, unwavering support of the janitor. By the time the session ended, it was clear to everyone that the dynamics of the courtroom had changed. The confrontation, intense and dramatic, had shifted the balance of power, revealing that courage, focus, and presence could outweigh expectation and assumption. The janitor, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in action, had turned the tide, showing that heroism often emerges when least expected, and that determination can challenge even the most formidable opposition. The billionaire looked at him, gratitude and astonishment in her eyes, silently acknowledging that her salvation had come not from privilege or power, but from someone she had never imagined could make a difference. The courtroom, once a place of intimidation and fear, now held the quiet thrill of astonishment and respect, ready for the next chapter of the story. The courtroom was silent, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. The tension from the confrontation lingered like a heavy cloud, but something remarkable was happening. The billionaire, once uncertain and vulnerable, now sat upright, her confidence growing with every exchange, guided by the steady presence of the janitor, who, despite his lack of legal training, had become her anchor. Her eyes, which had once darted nervously around the room, now met the judge's gaze with clarity and determination, signaling that she was ready to reclaim control. The turning point began subtly, almost imperceptibly, as the janitor noticed a critical weakness in the opposing counsel's case. It was a detail so small that a professional might have overlooked it, but his sharp observation and careful attention to the proceedings allowed him to spot it. A piece of evidence had been presented in a way that contradicted previous statements, a slip that could shift the entire argument. He quietly pointed it out to the billionaire, explaining calmly how to address it. His voice, steady and deliberate, gave her the courage to speak up. When the moment arrived, she seized it, presenting the inconsistency with confidence. Her words, guided by the janitor's subtle instructions, struck at the heart of the opposing counsel's argument, causing murmurs throughout the courtroom. The lawyers, initially smug and dismissive, faltered, their carefully constructed narrative beginning to crumble. The judge leaned forward, noting the shift, intrigued by the unexpected clarity and precision from someone who had seemed powerless only hours before. The janitor continued his quiet guidance, helping her structure her responses and reminding her to remain calm, focused, and persuasive. Each suggestion, each subtle nudge, became a tool in their growing strategy, allowing the billionaire to highlight contradictions, expose weaknesses, and gradually gain the upper hand. It was no longer about intimidation or wealth, it was about observation, clarity, and courage. The turning point was unfolding not through spectacle but through quiet, deliberate action, and the courtroom could feel it. As the session progressed, witnesses who had been confident in their testimony began to hesitate, sensing the shift in momentum. Even the opposing counsel struggled to regain composure, their earlier confidence replaced by doubt. The janitor's keen perception allowed him to predict their moves, guiding the billionaire with subtle instructions, pointing out opportunities to emphasize key facts and gently correcting minor missteps. His presence had become a force multiplier, turning uncertainty into power. The billionaire's demeanor transformed visibly, her voice stronger, her gestures deliberate, her arguments precise. She was no longer the abandoned figure from earlier, but a woman empowered by clarity, preparation, and the unwavering support of an unexpected ally. The audience sensed the change, leaning forward with anticipation as the battle of wits unfolded. The judge's attention sharpened, recognizing that the direction of the trial had shifted dramatically, and that this was no ordinary case anymore. The pivotal moment came when a crucial document, previously overlooked by the opposing counsel, was brought to light. The janitor had noticed it earlier, quietly guiding the billionaire on how to present it effectively. She referenced it calmly, pointing out contradictions and errors. The courtroom erupted in quiet astonishment, the momentum now firmly in her favor. It was a subtle but decisive victory, one that transformed the dynamics of the entire trial. The turning point was more than just a legal maneuver, it was a profound demonstration of courage, perception, and determination, showing that heroism often comes from ordinary people in extraordinary moments. The janitor, who had once been invisible, now stood at the center of a pivotal change, not through authority or status but through insight, loyalty, and unwavering resolve. His quiet brilliance had altered the course of events, turning despair into hope, vulnerability into strength. By the end of the session, the billionaire's confidence had been fully restored, and the courtroom atmosphere had shifted completely. The opposing counsel, once smug and certain, now faced the reality that they had underestimated both her and the janitor. The turning point had been reached, a moment where ordinary courage and sharp observation had triumphed over expectation and assumption, setting the stage for the final outcome, and proving that true heroes often emerge when no one expects them. The courtroom was electric with anticipation, every person present sensing that the outcome was finally within reach. The billionaire, now confident and composed, sat upright with a sense of determination that had been absent just hours earlier. Her eyes, once wide with fear, now gleamed with focus and quiet power, and beside her, the janitor stood as a calm, unwavering presence, his role no longer unnoticed but quietly commanding respect. The final testimonies were underway, and the opposing counsel, once arrogant and dismissive, struggled to maintain control. Their earlier confidence had eroded under the steady pressure of truth, observation, and careful strategy. The janitor continued to guide the billionaire subtly, whispering reminders, pointing to key documents, and suggesting simple yet effective questions. Each interaction strengthened her position, allowing her to present evidence with clarity and authority. Witness after witness revealed inconsistencies and contradictions that the opposing counsel had hoped would remain hidden. The billionaire, following the janitor's guidance, highlighted these points confidently, exposing gaps and errors in the arguments that had once seemed so formidable. The courtroom, once dominated by doubt and tension, began to shift, murmurs of astonishment spreading among spectators, reporters, and even members of the jury. It became clear that the balance had changed, the tide turning in her favor. The pivotal moment arrived when a key witness faltered under her questioning, revealing a critical inconsistency that could not be ignored. The opposing counsel's attempts to regain control were futile, and their frustration grew visibly. The judge, observing the proceedings closely, leaned forward, acknowledging the unexpected clarity and precision of the billionaire's defense. The janitor's quiet guidance had transformed the trial from chaos into a display of strategic, well-organized argument, even without formal legal training. Every small action, every subtle intervention by the janitor had contributed to the resolution. His attention to detail, his understanding of human behavior, and his unwavering support allowed the billionaire to navigate the courtroom with strength and confidence. She now commanded the room, not through intimidation or wealth, but through clarity, focus, and moral courage. The janitor, once invisible, had become the silent architect of this triumph, proving that heroism can emerge from the most unexpected places. Finally, after hours of tense proceedings, the judge delivered a verdict, and the room seemed to hold its breath. The billionaire had won, justice had been served, and the courtroom erupted in quiet astonishment. Some clapped softly, others whispered in disbelief, but everyone recognized that this victory had been extraordinary. It was not only a legal win but a testament to courage, loyalty, and the power of unexpected allies. The billionaire turned to the janitor, her expression a mixture of gratitude, amazement, and respect. Words were not enough to convey the depth of her appreciation, but her eyes spoke volumes, silently acknowledging that her salvation had come not from wealth, status, or professional expertise, but from the quiet, steadfast bravery of a man who had chosen to stand by her side when she needed him most. The janitor, humble as ever, simply nodded, his eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction. He did not seek recognition or reward. His courage had been enough. His belief in doing what was right, in standing up for justice, had made all the difference. The courtroom, once a place of fear and tension, now felt the ripple of respect and admiration for a hero whose actions were grounded in humanity and integrity. As people filed out of the room, whispers of amazement followed. Stories of the janitor's bravery would spread, inspiring those who heard them. The billionaire, once abandoned, had been defended, not by lawyers or power, but by courage, loyalty, and unexpected heroism. The resolution of the trial marked the triumph of human spirit over fear and betrayal, highlighting that true heroes often emerge when no one expects them, and that even the simplest acts of bravery can change lives forever. By the end of the day, the janitor quietly returned to his duties, sweeping floors and arranging chairs, yet the impact of his actions lingered. The billionaire had been saved, justice had been restored, and a story of extraordinary courage had been written into the history of that courthouse, a story that would inspire countless others to believe that anyone, no matter their status or position, can rise to greatness when faced with the moment that demands courage. The courtroom was quieter now, the echoes of the verdict still lingering in the polished wooden walls. The tension that had gripped the room for hours had dissolved, replaced by a sense of awe and reflection. The billionaire, once abandoned and vulnerable, now sat with a calm confidence, her eyes reflecting both relief and gratitude. She had faced the unimaginable, being left alone in a courtroom by the very person she trusted most. And yet, she had emerged victorious, thanks to an unexpected hero. The janitor, who had quietly guided her through the chaos, stood nearby, almost invisible to most, yet impossible to ignore for those who truly understood the magnitude of his actions. He had entered the courtroom that morning as an ordinary man, tasked with the simple duties of cleaning and maintaining order, but he had left it having changed the course of the billionaire's life. He had shown that heroism is not measured by wealth, title, or education, but by courage, integrity, and the willingness to act when others falter. As people slowly filed out, whispers of astonishment filled the corridors. The story of the janitor's bravery began to spread, each person recounting the events with growing admiration. Many spoke of the improbability of it all, a man with no legal training standing up in a courtroom and making a difference. But those who had witnessed it firsthand knew that courage often comes from the most unexpected places. The janitor had reminded everyone that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary things. The billionaire, now free from the immediate fear and uncertainty that had haunted her, turned to the janitor, her eyes brimming with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly, her voice steady but filled with heartfelt sincerity. "You saved me when I thought all hope was lost." The janitor simply nodded, a humble smile crossing his face. He had no desire for accolades or recognition. His satisfaction came from knowing he had done the right thing, that he had stood up when it mattered most. In the days that followed, the story continued to inspire, circulating among courthouse staff, lawyers, and the public. It was a tale that resonated deeply because it defied expectations. It reminded people that real courage is not loud or showy but often quiet, steadfast, and unseen. The janitor had become a symbol of hope, an example that anyone, no matter their role or status, could rise to extraordinary challenges when they chose to act with integrity. The billionaire, too, reflected on the lessons she had learned. The experience had humbled her, reminding her that power and wealth are fleeting without the support of those willing to stand by you in times of need. She had witnessed firsthand the value of character, loyalty, and bravery, and it had changed her perspective forever. She now understood that true allies are measured not by their status or credentials but by their willingness to act selflessly when the moment demands it. Even as life slowly returned to normal, the impact of that day lingered. The courtroom, once a place of intimidation and rigid hierarchy, had become a stage where humanity, courage, and justice triumphed over fear and betrayal. The janitor returned to his daily duties, sweeping floors and arranging chairs, yet his role in history had been cemented. The story of his bravery would be told and retold, a reminder that heroism can emerge from the most ordinary lives. Ultimately, the conclusion of this remarkable tale was not just about a legal victory, but about the triumph of human spirit. the billionaire had been defended, not by lawyers or wealth, but by courage, observation, and the unwavering determination of a man who saw a wrong and chose to make it right. It was a testament to the idea that the smallest actions can create the largest impact, that true heroism is often hidden in plain sight, and that ordinary people are capable of extraordinary change. As the sun set outside the courthouse, casting long shadows across the polished floors, the janitor paused for a moment, reflecting quietly. He knew that what had happened that day was extraordinary, not because of fame or fortune, but because of the courage, loyalty, and humanity that had guided every decision. He had defended her when no one else would, and in doing so, he had proven that heroes exist in every corner of life, waiting for the moment when they are needed most.